The shortest path, my friends, is not always the shortest path. That's pretty heavy, especially this early in the morning. So this new espresso we got must be pretty good. But in all seriousness, the shortest path isn't the shortest path. We've all seen those little tests online or, personality quiz or whatever you've taken, where they show you a couple of lines and it's like, which one is the longest? And it's obvious to your eyes that one of them is longer than the other. Maybe they have them going off in different directions, that kind of thing, just slightly different angles. And then you look at the answers as well, they're both the same length. And you say, no, it's not. Then you measure it, turns out that it is. So when it comes to the shortest path in switching, we have to watch physical versus logical because the physically shortest path is not always going to be the logically shortest path. And of course, that's what our switches are concerned with. They don't really care about physical distance as much as the logical distance. So let me show you what I'm talking about as soon as we take a look at a couple of port speeds that it's a good idea to know, because we know that the STP path costs themselves, they're determined by port speed. And to this point, we've only seen 100 meg ports because that's the default on our Cisco switch ports. And we haven't worked with Gig Ethernet. We're going to leave that alone for right now. But we may just see some good old regular Ethernet speed, some 10 meg come into play. And you can see that's a pretty darn big difference in cost, 100 versus 19. And that's definitely something to look for as we revisit this particular network. And when we did this one before, we were looking at all 100 meg speeds. And we walked through it, and actually I'm going to show you right now that exact same configuration has been set up, the same topology, and we'll just do a quick show spanning on each one. Here's our route, and we expect both ports to be in forwarding mode 1 and 3, and they are. We can go over to 2. We're going to show spanning VLAN 1. And we have the one port still in blocking mode that we expected to be in, and that's port 2 on switch 2. And let's go over to switch 3. And we see both ports here in forwarding mode, and we know why, even though this is not the root switch, because one of the ports is the root port and the other one, port 2 on switch 3, is the designated port for the segment that's directly connected to switch 2. So that was a great walkthrough. We saw that you only actually, or STP will actually just put one port into blocking mode out of those 6, and that's enough to prevent switching loops. So if I showed you this, it would be easy to say, okay, if I asked you, what's the root port on switch 3, and I didn't have it written right there, your eyes would say, okay, well, the port that's directly connected to the root, because you can't get any shorter than that. Well, maybe you can if the speeds change a little bit. And I'm not saying that they're going to try to trick you on the exam or that I would try to trick you in a job interview, but you don't want to just get used to seeing the same number for every link or the same speed, because every once in a while, someone evil like me might throw something in like this and say, well, one of the links is 10 meg, so now what are the port assignments going to be? Well, there's one really good way to find out, and that's to set our link on switch 1 to 10 meg, and we'll do that on both switches. And since we're here on switch 3, how can I see which one is directly connected to the switch? Show CDP neighbor, of course. So we've got fast 03 right there, just verifying what we saw in the diagram. And I'm going to force 10 meg operation. I'll do the same thing on switch 1. And expect to see the interfaces and line protocols go up and down when you do that. And that's actually going to be 3. Speed 10. And we'll just wait a second there. Let's do a show interface. There we go. And the line protocol comes back up. So we changed the speed, and we kind of expect to see the interface go up and down physically and logically, but we see right here also fast Ethernet 3 is up, line protocol is up, so everything is fine. So what has changed though? Let's run show spanning VLAN 1 here on switch 1. And notice we've got a port in learning mode, so that has not quite gone all the way from blocking to listening, or excuse me, blocking to forwarding, that is, but it's almost there since it's in learning mode. But the big deal right now is that cost. Notice the cost went up to 100. We did not use any kind of cost command to change that. It changed dynamically when we changed the port speed. So let's check it out now, see if we're in the forwarding mode. And we are. So both ports on the root switch, still in forwarding mode, we expect that, but the differences will come in on switches 2 and 3. Let's go ahead and go up to switch 2 and run show spanning VLAN 1. And notice now that both ports on switch 2 are in forwarding mode. And we'll go over to switch 3. We're going to show spanning VLAN 1, I hope. There we go. And now port 3 is in blocking mode and port 2 is in forwarding mode. So the directly connected link, the one going out Fast Ethernet 3, is in blocking mode. And that's because we changed the speed, and therefore by doing so, we changed the port cost. Because right now, from switch 3's point of view, here are the paths to the root. Well, the direct switch 3 to switch 1 root path cost is now 100, because that's one 10 meg link. And the switch 3 to switch 2 to switch 1 root path cost is 38, because we have two 100 meg links, and 19 plus 19, that adds up to 38. So you just got to watch that kind of thing, because that change in speed totally changed the port assignments on 2 and 3. Because where switch 2 did have port 2 in blocking mode, it's now forwarding because it is the designated port for the segment connected to switch 3. Switch 3's Ethernet, Fast Ethernet 2, is in forwarding mode as well because it's now the root port. So there's nothing wrong with having a root port designated port like we have here between switch 3 and switch 2. But the one port that's in blocking mode that STP put there and therefore is preventing switching loops is actually Fast Ethernet 3 on switch 3, the directly connected interface. So just watch those speeds, because again, your eyes will play tricks on you. You're in the middle of an exam and you just look at it and say, okay, you know, switch 3's root will be Fast Ethernet 3. That's true if they're all at the default, but whenever you see different speeds, and whether it's real world, test, practice, exam, job interview, I don't care. Whenever you see different speeds on an illustration like this, that should be a bit of a red flag and say, I better really get into doing a little bit of math here and seeing what the links are instead of just assuming what those port costs are. So we are going to leave that alone for right now. And speaking of port costs, we're going to change a couple of those in an upcoming video. And after that, we're going to start doing some per VLAN load balancing. That's all coming up next.